Epic of Metis, Titaness of Wisdom and Cunning. Chapter 1. The Birth of Metis in the Beginning. Before the reign of Olympian thunder, before the clash of titans and gods shook the pillars of the cosmos, there was the endless flow of Oceanus. From his fathomless waters and the nurturing embrace of Tethys sprang countless daughters, the ocean-its spirits of rivers, streams, and gentle springs. Most were bound to the natural order, attendants to forests, fountains, or the tides. Yet among them was born one, unlike the rest, a child who carried not the murmur of streams, but the whisper of destiny. Her name was Metis, and she was to become the embodiment of wisdom, cunning, and foresight. When Metis opened her eyes to the world, it is said that even the stars paused in their turning. Where her sisters danced in carefree delight, Metis lingered in silence, gazing deep into the currents of Oceanus. For within her, the river of thought was deeper than the seas that birthed her. She saw patterns where others saw chaos. She heard prophecy where others heard only the rush of waves. From the first, Metis was different. She did not merely sing with the rivers. She spoke of what lay beyond the horizon. To Tethys, her mother, she whispered of storms to come. To Oceanus, her father, she murmured that the reign of titans would not endure forever. The parents listened, uneasy, for the child's voice carried weight heavier than water, heavier than stone. It carried truth, the radiance of wisdom among the oceanites. Metis shone like a star hidden among pearls. Her sisters embodied beauty, fertility, and delight, but Metis bore the light of knowledge. She was called Polymetis, of many councils, even in her youth, where the Titanesses, Themis, and Mnemosyne held law and memory. Metis was their equal in foresight, weaving cunning into the fabric of fate itself. It was said she could weave words as spiders weave their silk, fine, near invisible, yet strong enough to ensnare gods and mortals alike. In her gaze, the proud Cronus felt the sting of unease, though he did not yet know why. In her smile, Rhea glimpsed comfort, as though Metis alone could soothe the torment of a mother robbed of her children. The shadow of Cronus. At that time, the world was held beneath the iron will of Cronus, king of the Titans. He had usurped his father Uranus with sickle and stone, casting him into darkness, and from that moment ruled in dread of prophecy. For it had been foretold that he too would fall undone by his own offspring. Thus Cronus swallowed each child Rhea bore, devouring them in fear. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all imprisoned in his belly, swallowed whole like stars cast into night. Metis, though not of Rhea's line, beheld these crimes with sorrow. Unlike the others, she did not tremble at Cronus's power. Her heart kindled with both pity and resolve. She whispered to herself in the stillness of night, "No reign endures forever. No tyrant escapes fate. In the womb of Rhea, hope shall rise again." And so she watched, and she waited, a child of destiny. When Rhea bore her sixth child, Zeus, she sought Metis in secret. For among the Oceanids, none was more trusted than the daughter of wisdom. "Help me," Rhea pleaded, her voice breaking like waves against rock. "I cannot bear another child, only to see him swallowed by darkness." Metis placed her hand upon the infant's brow, and her eyes grew distant, as though she peered into the threads of time itself. She saw fire, storm, and war. She saw the clash of titans and gods, the rise of a new order, and she whispered, "This one shall be the breaker of chains. Hide him, nourish him, for through him fate shall turn." Thus was Zeus spared the maw of Cronus, hidden in the cave of Dictyon Crete, nurtured by the goat Amalthea, and guarded by the Curates. But though others tended his body, it was Metis who tended his destiny. She came to him in dreams, in whispers of the wind, guiding his spirit even as he grew. She became his unseen teacher, his secret mother of wisdom, the seeds of prophecy. As the years passed, Metis's renown spread among gods and mortals alike. She did not seek temples or prayers, yet her presence was felt whenever cunning triumphed over brute force, whenever wisdom conquered folly. Sailors claimed she stirred their thoughts when storms threatened. Kings swore their finest counsels were born of her unseen hand. But within her heart stirred unease, for she too had heard whispers of prophecy, not of Cronus, but of herself. The fates had spoken in veiled tones. The children of Metis shall surpass their father. One shall embody wisdom, another shall wield power greater than the storm. Metis, though wise, was troubled. She did not yet know how these words would unfold. She only knew that her path would entwine with Zeus's, for in his rise lay both her destiny and her doom. Dawn of the Cunning One, thus the world came to know Metis, not merely as an oceanhead, but as the titaness of wisdom and cunning. She moved like a shadow through the courts of gods, unseen but felt, feared by those who ruled through strength alone. For strength may shatter stone, but wisdom shapes the course of rivers. When the Olympians whispered of rebellion, it was Metis who listened. When Zeus plotted vengeance, it was Metis who taught him patience. She became the strategist, the quiet flame that would ignite the downfall of Cronus. And so the tale begins, not with thunder, nor with war, but with a woman born of the waters, whose mind was deeper than the sea, whose will was sharper than iron, and whose name would echo forever through the halls of Olympus. Metis, the first of counsel, mother of wisdom. Chapter 2, The Age of Cronus, before the thunders of Olympus. Before the spear of Zeus split the sky, the world lay under the shadow of Cronus, king of the Titans. His throne stood upon the firmament, vast and cold, and his rule stretched across both earth and heaven. To mortals he was distant, as immovable as stone. To gods he was dread incarnate. For Cronus had learned from the blood of his father Uranus that power is never secure, and from that fear he wove his reign of terror. Cronus was not born wicked. He had once been hailed as a liberator, the Titan who rose against Uranus's cruelty with the sickle of adamant. When he cast down his father, the cosmos itself rejoiced, for the vault of heaven was freed from tyranny. But the shadow of prophecy followed him like a hound. For Gaia, mother of all, whispered, "As you overthrew your father, so too shall your child overthrow you." From that moment, Cronus became a prisoner of his own dread. Fear gnawed at him, sharper than the blade he once wielded. And in that fear, he fashioned his most monstrous act. The devouring father, each time Rhea, his queen, bore a child, Cronus came with hands of iron and eyes of fire. He took the newborn, still wet with the breath of life, and swallowed it whole. One by one the children vanished. Hestia, gentle flame, consumed. Demeter, nourisher of fields, consumed. Hera, proud and radiant, consumed. Hades, lord of shadows, consumed. Poseidon, shaker of seas, consumed. 5 times Rhea wept. 5 times she begged. 5 times the heavens echoed with the cries of a mother bereft. Yet Cronus showed no mercy. He believed that if the children dwelt within him, they could never rise against him. His belly became a prison, a tomb of living gods. The world groaned beneath his paranoia. Seasons faltered, harvests failed, and the laughter of the divine was silenced. Where once there had been promise, now there was only dread, Metis observes. Amid this darkness, Metis moved silently. She was no wife of Cronus, no prisoner of his hunger, but she beheld his tyranny with unflinching eyes. Her wisdom pierced the veil of fear. She saw not only what Cronus had done, but what must come after. Among the Oceanids, her sisters whispered in sorrow. They feared to speak aloud against the Titan king. But Metis, daughter of counsel, held her tongue not in fear, but in patience. For she knew that destiny does not yield to haste. She studied the reign of Cronus as a hunter studies the movements of prey. She saw his strengths, brute will, ruthless, cunning. She saw also his weakness, terror of fate. To Rhea, Metis became a quiet comfort. She would sit beside the grieving queen and murmur words of solace. "The river does not stop at the mountain," she said. "It carves a new path. So too shall fate carve a way through this shadow." Rhea listened, her heart aching yet steadied by the certainty in Metis's voice. The world in chains while Cronus ruled, the cosmos itself seemed to hold its breath. The Titans loyal to him marched the skies with golden armor, enforcing silence. The younger gods, unborn or imprisoned, had no voice. Mortals tilled their fields beneath a sun that shone with weariness. For Helios himself grew dim beneath the Titans' rule. Themis, Titaness of law, turned her face away, unable to watch the perversion of justice. Mnemosyne, Titaness of memory, wept, fearing that all bright days would be forgotten. Even Prometheus, the forethinker, hid his sparks of fire, lest Cronus snuff them out. Only Metis, ever watchful, carried hope within her. She whispered to herself, "Tyranny feeds upon fear. When fear is broken, so too shall tyranny crumble." Rhea's desperation when at last Rhea prepared to bear her sixth child. Despair threatened to consume her. She could not endure another theft, another devouring. Her heart was torn between terror of Cronus and love for the life within her. In the secrecy of night, she sought out Metis. Beneath the stars, by the banks of a hidden spring, the two women met. Rhea's eyes burned with grief, but Metis's gaze was calm, like still water, hiding depths unfathomed. "Help me," Rhea whispered, her voice trembling. "I cannot give my child to darkness again. Tell me what I must do." Metis laid her hand upon the queen's belly, and her sight stretched into the unseen. She felt the spark of the unborn god, wild and fierce, storm coiled within a fragile shell. And in that instant, she knew, "This child is not like the others," she said. "He is the turning of the tide, the one whom prophecy foretold. Hide him, nurture him. Let Cronus believe he has won, but in secret raise this son to manhood. Through him the chain shall be broken." Rhea's hope ignited anew, though fear still clung to her heart. Yet Metis's voice was steady, and in it she heard truth. The trick of the stone when the hour came and Rhea birthed her son, she followed Metis's counsel. She swaddled the newborn Zeus in secrecy and carried him away to the cave of Dict, where the goat Amalthea would nurse him and the Curetes would guard him with clashing shields. But to Cronus she brought not her child, but a cunning illusion. Metis herself devised it, a stone wrapped in swaddling cloth, warm and heavy in Rhea's arms. To Cronus it looked as any infant might. Blinded by dread, the Titan king seized the bundle and swallowed it whole. never suspecting that within him lay not a son, but only lifeless stone. Thus Zeus was spared, and destiny stirred in silence. The hidden teacher. Though Zeus grew upon Crete, nourished by milk and honey, it was Metis who guided him unseen. She came to him in dreams, her voice like the rustle of leaves, teaching him patience, cunning, and restraint. Strength without wisdom is folly, she whispered. Strike not with haste, but with purpose. For a storm spent too soon leaves only silence. Zeus listened. Though he grew strong and fierce, he learned to temper his rage, to think before he struck. And within him the fire of rebellion kindled. The gathering storm, so the age of Cronus endured, heavy with dread, but beneath its weight seeds of change took root. Metis watched as Zeus grew in secret. She watched as Cronus, blind in arrogance, swallowed stone instead of sun. She watched as Rhea's sorrow turned to quiet hope, and she knew the world could not remain in chains forever. The day would come when the belly of Cronus would disgorge its captives, when the prison of fear would shatter, and when wisdom and cunning, not brute strength, would open the path to freedom. For fate is patient, and wisdom waits longer still, and Metis, the tightness of counsel, was already weaving the threads of destiny that would one day unmake the tyrant's reign. Chapter 3. The Whisper of Prophecy. The reign of Cronus was long, yet no reign, however iron, can silence the murmurs of fate. In caverns deep and on winds that howled across the mountains, whispers stirred. They came from the lips of the Moirai, the Fates, who spun the thread of all that was, is, and will be. Their voices were faint, but to those with ears sharpened by wisdom, they rang like thunder. It was Metis who heard them most clearly. As she wandered the shadowed groves and the lonely streams, she caught their fragments, drifting like leaves upon water. She bent her ear and listened. The child of Cronus shall rise against the father, and the father's reign shall end. Metis knew these words well. They had already shaped the course of the world. Yet there were other whispers, hidden deeper in the loom of fate. Secrets that even Cronus, in his dread, did not perceive. The Fates spoke not only of the fall of Cronus, but of Metis herself. The one who weds Metis shall sire a child more powerful than he. Beware, O king, the wisdom you consume, for wisdom cannot be caged. These words chilled her heart, for they were a double-edged prophecy. She was destined to aid in the downfall of tyranny, yet her own womb carried danger, even for the liberator she nurtured. The hidden knowledge. Metis did not speak this prophecy to Rhea, for the queen's heart already bore too much sorrow. She did not whisper it to Themis, nor to Mnemosyne, though they too felt the stirring of change. Instead, she carried it in silence, turning it again and again within her mind like a jewel with too many facets. She knew Zeus would rise, but what would become of him if he drew too close to her? Would his triumph birth another cycle of overthrow, as endless as the turning of seasons? Would fate devour him as surely as Cronus devoured his children? Thus Metis walked in solitude, bearing wisdom both as gift and burden. Zeus's awakening, meanwhile, in the caves of Crete, Zeus grew tall and fierce. The curates clashed their shields to hide his cries from Cronus's ears, and Amalthea's milk made him strong. But more than strength filled him, for in his dreams Metis came, whispering counsel. Your father rules by fear. Fear is a chain, and chains can be broken. Do not strike before the time, but watch, learn, wait. When the hour comes, wisdom and courage together shall topple stone. Zeus awoke from these dreams with fire in his chest. He wrestled the beasts of the mountain, not only to test his might, but to sharpen his cunning. He watched the eagles soar and learned patience from their flight. He listened to the streams as Metis taught and understood how water wears down rock, not by strength, but by persistence. In the hidden places of the earth, a king was being forged in it, of brute force alone, but of mind and spirit shaped by Metis's unseen hand. Cronus's unease, yet even as Zeus grew, Cronus's unease deepened. Though he believed himself safe, with each child swallowed, his dreams grew troubled. He saw shadows stirring at the edges of his sleep. He heard in the silence of his palace a faint echo, as though the cries of the swallowed gods still rang from his belly. He sought counsel among the Titans, but none dared speak the truth. Only Metis, when summoned to his hall, met his gaze without trembling. She spoke no prophecy, only veiled words. All things move as rivers move, my king. They flow from the mountain to the sea, and none can command their course forever. Cronus frowned, for her words tasted of warning, though she bowed as if in respect. He began to mistrust her, yet he did not strike, for even in his dread, he feared the wisdom she carried, as though destroying her might hasten the very fate he sought to avoid. The gathering of prophecy. Elsewhere, others too heard the whispers. Themis, who knew the laws of gods, spoke softly of change to those who would listen. Prometheus, ever cunning, dreamed of fire, stolen and given to mortals. Fire that would blaze most brightly under a new king. Yet it was Metis alone who held the key. She knew not only that Zeus must rise, but how he must strike. For brute force could not free the swallowed gods, nor could fury alone defeat Cronus. Cunning must guide strength. Wisdom must temper fire. And so she prepared, in secret, the first tools of liberation. In hidden glades, she gathered herbs of power, roots that could unbind even the tightest grasp. She brewed draughts that could loosen the strongest stomach, potions to force the mighty to disgorge what they had devoured. These she kept close, knowing that one day they would be needed. A glimpse of destiny one night, beneath the silver eye of Selene, Metis dreamed. In her vision, she saw Zeus standing tall upon a mountain, thunder in his hand and storm in his eyes. Behind him rose Athena, gleaming in armor, radiant as dawn. But then the dream shifted, and she saw another sun, vast as the sky, wielding power that even Zeus could not master. And in that vision, the cosmos trembled, as though the cycle of overthrow might never end. Metis awoke with a cry, torn between pride and fear. She pressed her hands to her heart, whispering, "O fate, cruel and unyielding, must wisdom itself birth ruin? Must the liberator become the tyrant, and the child surpass the father without end?" The wind gave no answer, save the rustle of leaves and the echo of distant thunder. The silent resolve, though troubled, Metis did not falter. She resolved that her role was clear. She would shape Zeus, arm him with cunning, and prepare the hour of rebellion. The prophecy of her children she would carry alone, a burden for her heart and none others. For she knew that without her, Zeus would strike in anger and fall. With her counsel, he would strike in wisdom and prevail. And perhaps, though fate was inexorable, perhaps cunning could weave a path where none seemed to exist. Thus, Metis, the silent architect of destiny, continued her watch. She whispered to Rhea, soothing her sorrow. She whispered to Zeus, shaping his will. She even whispered to Cronus, cloaking her warnings in riddles, so that he would fear but not yet act. and the whispers of prophecy, once faint, grew louder with each passing year. The world itself seemed to wait, caught between the iron of Cronus and the storm that would one day break his crown. Chapter 4. The Rise of Zeus in the secret womb of Crete, hidden from the devouring maw of Cronus. The child Zeus grew in strength and stature. The cave of Dict was his cradle, its shadowed walls echoing with the clash of bronze as the Curetes struck their shields, drowning his infant cries with martial thunder. Above him, the goat Amalthea gave her milk, rich and wild, while bees brought honey from hidden flowers, feeding him with the sweetness of the earth itself. But though milk and honey nourished his body, it was wisdom that nourished his spirit. And wisdom came to him through Metis. She walked unseen, her voice weaving through his dreams like silver threads, shaping his thoughts before he even knew his destiny. Where other children grew in play, Zeus grew in cunning. Where other sons learned through trial, Zeus was tutored by foresight. Metis whispered, "A storm is nothing if it scatters too soon. Hold fast, my child of thunder. Grow in silence, and one day the world shall tremble at your step." And so Zeus learned patience, a weapon sharper than any spear. The trials of youth. As the years unfurled, Zeus tested his strength against the wilds of Crete. He wrestled bulls, whose horns gleamed like moonlight, forcing them to their knees. He climbed jagged cliffs and cast his voice to the sky, his shout rolling like thunder. He hunted with bare hands, seizing boars by their tusks, until his skin bore the marks of trial. Yet these feats alone did not shape him into a king, for in each contest he remembered the whispers of Metis. Do not rely on strength alone. Cunning turns defeat into triumph. Thus, when eagles swooped upon him, Zeus did not strike blindly. He cast stones into the air, luring them downward, then seized them in mid-flight. When serpents coiled around his arms, he did not wrestle in fury, but tightened their grip until they strangled themselves. Each victory was not only of muscle, but of mind. The Curetes marveled, saying, "This youth is more than mortal, more than Titan-born. He is storm-wrapped in flesh," and they bowed before him, though he bore no crown. The council of Metis in quiet hours. Metis appeared more clearly to Zeus, not merely as a whisper, but as a form of light and shadow. Sometimes she was a maiden robed in silver, her eyes fathomless as the sea. Sometimes she was a bird, alighting upon his shoulder, her voice a song of riddles. Zeus asked her, "Why do you guide me? What is it you seek?" And Metis replied, "I seek only the breaking of chains. The world is bound by fear, and fear devours the innocent. You, child of Rhea, are the key to freedom. But freedom bought by rage is fleeting. Learn wisdom, and your reign shall endure." Zeus bowed his head, humbled. For though strength surged in him like a river in flood, he felt within her words the weight of eternity, the burden of knowledge. Yet even as Zeus grew, Cronus remained upon his throne, blind to the danger rising in secret. Still, he swallowed stones and suns alike, believing himself secure. Still, the Titans marched, their armor gleaming, their shadows long. Metis, however, bore a burden no other carried. She alone knew the full tapestry of fate. She knew that Zeus would rise, that Cronus would fall, but also that her own path was entwined with peril. For she had seen the prophecy of her children, that if she joined with Zeus, her offspring would surpass him as surely as he surpassed Cronus. And so, even as she guided him, she grieved, for she loved wisdom above all things, and wisdom told her that triumph bore the seed of downfall. The first rebellion, when Zeus came of age, taller than the tallest man, his voice like the crash of surf. He turned his eyes toward the heavens, where Cronus ruled. In his heart burned both fury and resolve. He cried to Metis, "How long shall I linger in shadows, while my brothers and sisters lie imprisoned? How long shall I hide, while the tyrant devours all hope?" Metis laid her hand upon his brow, and her voice was calm. "Not yet. The hour must be chosen with care. Strike too soon, and the world shall shatter under his wrath. Strike with cunning, and victory shall be yours." Zeus clenched his fists, but he heeded her words. He was storm-contained, waiting for the sky to break. The gathering of allies still. Zeus did not wait idle. He roamed the hidden places of the earth, seeking allies for the day to come. The nymphs of Ida taught him the songs of the earth. The Cyclopes, hidden deep in caverns, murmured of forging weapons for one who would free them. Even the Hecatonchyres, monstrous with 100 hands, stirred faintly at the scent of change. Everywhere he went, Metis's voice guided him. "Bind them not with fear, but with promise. Let them see not a tyrant's son, but a liberator." And so Zeus spoke with words as keen as blades, winning loyalty not by chains, but by hope. His name began to travel in whispers. Zeus, the hidden one. Zeus, the storm to come. Met the fire in his heart one night, as thunder rolled over the mountains. Zeus climbed to the highest peak. Lightning forked across the sky, and he stood with arms outstretched, daring the storm. In that moment, the heavens answered him. A bolt struck the rock at his feet, shattering stone to dust. He seized it in his hand, unburned, and felt its power course through him. "This," he said, "is my birthright. I am storm-born, thunder's heir. Let Cronus tremble, for his reign." Metis appeared beside him, her eyes gleaming. "Yes, child. But remember, the storm destroys as well as frees. Wield it with care, lest you become the tyrant you despise." Zeus nodded, though fire still raged within him. The dawn approaches, thus the rise of Zeus was no longer secret. The earth itself seemed to know. Trees bent toward him, rivers quickened their flow, and eagles circled high above his head. Cronus's dreams grew restless, haunted by shadows he could not name. Metis, watching from the quiet places, knew the hour drew near. The potion she had brewed in secret, the draught that could unbind the Titan's belly, was ready. Soon she would place it in Zeus's hand, and the prison of Cronus would be broken. But she also knew the cost that with each step Zeus climbed toward his throne. She drew closer to her own doom. For wisdom had whispered long ago that her fate was not to stand free, but to be swallowed by the very god she raised to power. Yet she did not falter, for the world waited, and its freedom weighed heavier than her fear. Chapter 5. The Potion of Liberation. The time of silence had passed. The years of hiding, of whispers and patient growth, had carried Zeus to the threshold of destiny. Now the storm pressed against his chest, eager to break loose. And in that decisive hour, Metis came to him, bearing a gift wrought of wisdom and peril, the potion that would shatter the bonds of Cronus, the secret craft of Metis. In caverns deep, where no Titan eye could peer, Metis had gathered herbs whose roots drank moonlight, whose leaves sang to the stars. She crushed them with pestles of stone older than Olympus, mixing them with waters drawn from Lethe's stream, stirred with whispers of forgotten spells. The brew smoked and shimmered, shifting colors like dawn's first light. It was neither poison nor cure, but a draught of release crafted not to kill Cronus, but to force his belly to yield its dreadful harvest. Zeus beheld it, the liquid glowing faintly in the vessel of obsidian. "This," he said, voice taut with awe, "is the key to the chains of my siblings." Metis bowed her head. "Yes, but take heed, child of thunder, this potion is cunning. It cannot be forced upon him with strength alone. It must be given by guile, for Cronus swallows nothing but what he believes his own." Zeus's eyes burned. "Then guile shall serve me, as strength shall finish the deed." The council of night. That evening, under a sky veiled in storm, Zeus called forth those who already bent toward his cause. The nymphs who had fed him, the curates who had guarded him, the cyclopes who watched from shadow. They formed a circle, torches burning like stars fallen to earth. "Brothers and sisters of fate," Zeus cried, his voice rolling like distant thunder, "the hour is come. Long have we borne the yoke of Cronus, who devours his children as a coward devours fear. But I am not swallowed, nor shall I bow. Tonight we strike not with blade, but with cunning. Tonight we plant the seed of his downfall." The curates beat their shields in thunderous rhythm. The nymphs raised their voices in song, weaving courage through the night air. The cyclopes, vast and brooding, rumbled their assent. All eyes turned to Zeus, and behind him stood Metis, silent as fate. The approach to Cronus disguised as a cupbearer, Zeus came before Cronus in the golden hall of Mount Othrys. The Titan king sat upon a throne of stone, his eyes hollow yet fierce, his crown forged of fear itself. Around him lay the spoils of his rain reavers, bent to his command. Mountains scarred by his hunger, and shadows cast over every living thing. Zeus bowed low, hiding the storm in his heart. "Mighty Cronus," he said, his voice honeyed with false devotion, "I bring a draught worthy of your majesty, a gift from the earth itself, a nectar to strengthen your eternal reign." Cronus's gaze lingered on the vessel, suspicion flickering like lightning, yet pride was his weakness. No gift did he believe unworthy of his grasp, for all things, he thought, belonged to him by right. With a cold smile, he seized the cup and drank deep, the torment of the Titan at first silence. Cronus leaned back, savoring what he believed a tribute. Then a tremor ran through him. His body convulsed, his eyes widened in terror, and a cry split the air, harsh, ragged, the roar of a god undone. One by one, from his belly burst the children he had swallowed, Hestia, Hera, Demeter, Poseidon, and Hades, each fully formed, immortal and radiant, their bodies shining with the fire of rebirth. The hall shook as they fell upon the earth, no longer prisoners but freeborn gods, their cries mingling with thunder. The Titan king clutched his stomach, his pride shattered. Rage and disbelief warred upon his face. What trick is this? What sorcery defies my will? And Zeus, no longer cloaked in disguise, stood tall before him. His eyes blazed with stormlight, and his voice thundered, not sorcery, but justice. "I am Zeus, your son whom you could not swallow, and I come to end your reign of fear." The reunion of the gods, Hera rose first, her gaze fierce, her spirit unbroken despite her long imprisonment. "Brother," she cried, "your hand has freed us. By your name we stand with you." Poseidon grasped his trident, newly forged by the seas that loved him, and his laughter rumbled like waves against cliffs. "Let the earth shake with our vengeance." Hades, silent and dark, merely nodded, but in his eyes burned a shadowy flame of loyalty. Demeter, her hair like ripened grain, laid her hand upon Zeus's shoulder. You are the sower of freedom. The harvest of your courage shall feed the world. Hestia, radiant with calm fire, whispered, with you, brother, the hearth of Olympus shall be kindled. Together they turned, their strength united, their chains broken. The wrath of Cronus staggered to his feet, his form vast as a mountain. Fury burned through him, hotter than the sun. He seized his sickle, the same blade with which he had struck down Uranus, and its edge gleamed with ancient blood. You dare, he roared, to rise against me. Ungrateful spawn, you think yourselves gods. I am Cronus. I am time itself, and none shall unmake me. Zeus lifted his hand, and thunder answered. Lightning danced along his arm, the first spark of the weapon that would become his eternal symbol. He hurled it at his father, and the hall exploded with light. Cronus reeled, his sickle ringing against stone, yet he did not fall. The war had begun. Metis in the shadows, amid the clash of storm and Titan's rage, Metis withdrew into shadow. She had played her part, her cunning striking the first blow that unbound the future. Yet she knew this was but the beginning. The Titanomachy would consume gods and earth alike, and her wisdom would be called upon again and again. Still, she allowed herself one fleeting moment of triumph. She had freed the children, toppled the first stone from the fortress of Cronus, and though she foresaw her own doom entwined with Zeus's rise, she did not waver. For in wisdom lies sacrifice, and in sacrifice lies the seed of eternity. And so, with Cronus reeling, the Olympians reborn, and Zeus revealed in his storm-born majesty, the world trembled on the edge of a new age. The chains were broken, but the war for the cosmos had only just begun. Chapter 6. Strategist of the Titanomachy. The liberation of Zeus's siblings shattered the silence of ages. The golden hall of Cronus still trembled from the storm that had torn it open, and the Titan king's roar echoed across earth, sea, and sky. From that moment, the world was no longer his undisputed realm. A new power had risen, one born of storm and cunning, and the war that would shape eternity began to stir. Yet wars are not won by thunder alone. Strength breaks mountains, but strategy topples empires. And in this, Metis, the Titaness of cunning, became the hidden hand that steered Olympus toward victory. The gathering storm, after the great flight from Athens, Zeus and his freed siblings retreated to a cavernous stronghold upon the slopes of Mount Olympus, a mountain untouched by Cronus's shadow. There the 6 children of Rhea stood together for the first time, no longer captives, but a pantheon reborn. Hera spoke first, her eyes aflame. We must strike now, while Cronus reels. Let us take his throne before he gathers his armies. Poseidon thundered in agreement. The seas hunger for battle. Give me leave, and I shall drown Othrys beneath waves. But Hades, brooding and pale, shook his head. Cronus is wounded, not slain. He will call the Titans, and their might will eclipse ours if we charge unprepared. We must be cunning, or we shall be devoured again. Zeus listened, torn between fire and caution. It was then that Metis stepped forth from the shadows, her voice soft yet commanding. You are gods, born of Cronus, yet destined to surpass him. But destiny bows only to those who shape it. Hear me, Olympians, this war cannot be won by fury alone. Cronus' strength lies not only in his sickle, but in the host of Titans who will rally to his side. To overcome them, we must weave strategy as tightly as the fates weave their threads. Her words stilled the storm of debate. Even Hera, proud and unyielding, bent her ear to Metis. The three gifts of strategy. Metis laid out her counsel in 3 parts, as clear and sharp as the edge of a blade. First, she said, they must win the allegiance of the ancient ones whom Cronus had cast into Tartarus, the Cyclopes, master smiths, and the Hecatonchires, monstrous yet mighty. Cronus feared them, and so he chained them in darkness. Free them, and they shall forge weapons and hurl mountains in your cause. Second, they must divide the Titans. Not all are loyal to Cronus. Some, weary of his tyranny, may turn to you if offered honor. Seek them, and your enemy will be weakened from within. Third, they must learn patience. The Titans are strong, but they are proud. Their pride blinds them to guile. Lure them into battle, on ground of your choosing, and there spring the storm. Zeus, who had long heeded her whispers, struck his palm against his chest. So shall it be. By thunder, by cunning, we shall wage war, not as blind beasts, but as masters of fate. The descent into Tartarus. Thus Zeus, guided by Metis, descended into the abyss of Tartarus, where the air burned with despair, and the chains of ancient prisoners clanged in endless night. With him went Hades, who knew the silence of shadow, and Poseidon, whose strength could shake the foundations of the pit. There they found the Cyclopes, bent and scarred, their single eyes dim with long captivity. Beside them writhed the Hecatonchires, their 100 hands clashing against bonds that no mortal could bear. Zeus lifted his voice, echoing through the chasm, "Children of earth and chaos, too long have you been bound by fear. I, Zeus, come not as jailer, but as liberator. Stand with me, and your chains shall be broken, your strength honored, your names sung in eternity." The Cyclopes stirred, and their eyes kindled with fire. The Hecatonchires shook their bonds until mountains trembled above. And when Zeus shattered their chains with lightning, they fell to their knees in oath. "For you," the Cyclopes cried, "we shall forge gifts unlike any seen before. To you, O Thunderer, we give the bolt of storm. To Hades we grant the helm of shadows, and to Poseidon the trident that rends sea and earth." And so the gods bore weapons worthy of their destiny. The division of the Titans, meanwhile, Metis wove her cunning among the Titans. She whispered into the hearts of those who bore grudges against Cronus Mnemosyne, who longed for freedom of thought, Phemius, who yearned for justice, Prometheus, whose mind was fire untamed. One by one, they bent their ears to her riddles, and one by one, they drifted from Cronus's side. Thus the Titan king, who had devoured his children for fear of prophecy, now felt prophecy gnawing from within his ranks. The first clash. At last, the war erupted. Upon the plain of Thessaly, the two hosts met Titans clad in mountains for armor, their roars shaking the stars, and Olympians radiant with newborn might, lightning flashing in their eyes. Cronus raised his sickle high, its edge burning with the memory of Uranus's blood. Zeus hurled the first thunderbolt, its light searing the heavens. Poseidon struck the earth with his trident, and seas surged where no water had flowed. Hades vanished beneath his helm, a shadow upon the battlefield. The clash shook heaven and earth. Yet, though the Titan's strength was vast, the Olympians fought with strategy. Guided by Metis, they struck not where the enemy was strongest, but where pride had left them unguarded. The Hecatonchires hurled mountains, the Cyclopes' weapons blazed, and the tide of battle shifted. But victory did not come in a day, nor in a year. For 10 years the war raged, the Titanomachy echoing through every corner of existence. Days were fire, nights were shadow, and the world itself groaned beneath the weight of divine struggle. The hidden hand. Through it all, Metis remained unseen on the field, yet her hand was in every triumph. She counseled Zeus when rage threatened to blind him. She guided Poseidon to strike where seas could shatter Titan ranks. She whispered to Hades when silence and shadow served better than open assault. And always she reminded them, this is not only a war of strength, but of cunning. Win the minds of allies, outwit the pride of foes, and you shall shape eternity. Thus the Titanomachy burned on, a war of gods and giants, of storm and shadow. But beneath the thunder, beneath the clash of blade and lightning, it was wisdom that steered the storm. And in the heart of wisdom stood Metis, the Titaness unseen, whose cunning was the thread upon which Olympus's fate was woven. Chapter 7. Victory of the Olympians. For 10 years the earth shook beneath the weight of battle. The Titanomachy raged without ceasing. Storms devoured the skies. Seas rose against mountains, and the cries of gods and titans mingled in endless thunder. Rivers changed their courses, forests burned, and the very bones of Gaia groaned beneath the strain. Cronus, vast as a storm front, wielded his sickle with the fury of time itself. Around him stood the elder Titans, Hyperion, whose fire could blind even the sun, Zeus, whose mind pierced the farthest reaches of heaven, and Crius, whose spear glittered with the cold light of the stars. Against them the young Olympians pressed with valor unbroken, yet neither side gave ground. But wars of eternity are not won by strength alone. Strategy is the hidden crown of victory, and that crown rested in the hands of Metis. The weariness of war, the Olympians had grown strong, but war had wearied them. 10 years of strife had left Zeus's arm heavy, Hera's fury dimmed, and even Poseidon's storms rolled with slower might. Around their campfires on Olympus's slopes, doubt crept like mist. Can we prevail? Demeter murmured, her eyes hollow with grief for the lands scorched by battle. We are but 6, and Cronus commands legions, said Hades, his voice heavy as the underworld. Even Zeus sat silent, thunder dim in his eyes. The gods, though immortal, felt the weight of endless struggle. It was then that Metis came among them, her form cloaked in silver light, her gaze sharp as a hawk's. Do you falter? She asked, her voice cutting the silence. Then you are already defeated. Strength alone cannot topple Cronus, but cunning has already bent his will. Have you forgotten the Cyclopes, who forged your weapons, the Hecatonchires, who hurl mountains at your foes, allies won by wisdom, not strength? Hear me, Olympians, the end is near, but it must be seized with guile. Zeus lifted his head, and stormlight returned to his gaze. Speak, Metis, what is your counsel? The final stratagem, Metis unfolded her plan. Cronus believes himself unassailable. His pride blinds him, for he has never feared to stand upon the open field. There we cannot overcome him, for his strength is boundless. But if we lure him into the valley of Phlegra, between earth and sea, then Poseidon may shake the waters to flood the ground, and the Hecatonchires may rain mountains upon him. They're bound by earth and wave. Even Cronus shall falter. Strike him there, and the war shall end. The gods listened, their weariness lifting as her words wove hope. Zeus struck the ground with his hand. So be it. By thunder's flame, we shall end this tyranny in the valley of Phlegra. The lure of pride, thus the Olympians set the snare. They sent Hermes, swift-footed son of Maia, to carry false whispers into the ears of Cronus, that Zeus challenged him to single combat, a duel for the throne of heaven. Cronus, ever proud, seized upon the bait. "Let him come," he roared. "I shall carve him open as I carved Uranus before him." The elder Titans, though cautious, could not sway him, for arrogance was Cronus's crown. With sickle in hand and his host behind him, he marched toward Phlegra, the valley where earth met sea. The battle of Phlegra. The valley darkened as the two hosts converged. On one side stood Cronus and his Titans, towering as mountains, their weapons gleaming with ancient wrath. On the other, the Olympians, their eyes burning with newborn fire, their allies at their backs. The clash shook the cosmos. Poseidon's trident split the earth, seas pouring into the valley. Waves rose, swirling around the Titans' legs, dragging them down. From the heights, the Hecatonchires hurled boulders vast as islands, their 100 hands a storm of stone. The Cyclopeus forges lit the sky, hurling fire that seared even Hyperion's light. And at the center of it all, Zeus and Cronus met in thunder. Father and son, Cronus swung his sickle, the blade shrieking as it cleaved the air. Zeus answered with a thunderbolt, lightning cracking against the ancient steel. Again and again they clashed, storm against time, light against shadow. "You are but a child," Cronus thundered, "a spark against the fire of eternity." "I am storm," Zeus replied, his voice rolling like the heavens breaking, "and even time shall bow before the storm." With each blow, the valley quaked. Lightning seared the skies, waves surged higher, and the ground split open. But Cronus's strength began to falter, for the flood dragged at his legs. The stones rained upon his shoulders, and the storm did not relent. The fall of Cronus at last, Metis whispered into Zeus's ear, "Now, strike now, when pride has blinded him." Zeus hurled a final bolt, brighter than the sun, heavier than the weight of years. It struck Cronus square upon his chest, shattering his armor, burning through his heart. With a cry that shook the bones of creation, Cronus fell, his sickle slipping from his grasp. The Titans broke. Some fled into shadow, others fell beneath the fury of the gods. The Hecatonchires chained those who remained, binding them in bonds forged by Cyclopean hands. The Titanomachy was ended. The triumph of Olympus on the heights of Olympus. The gods stood together, victorious. Hera raised her arms, her cry piercing the heavens, "We are free." Poseidon lifted his trident, and seas thundered in celebration. Hades, grim yet resolute, turned his eyes toward the underworld. Now his two rule. Demeter blessed the earth, coaxing green shoots from the ashes of war. Hestia kindled the sacred fire upon Olympus, its flame eternal. And Zeus, crowned not by hand but by storm, raised his voice by thunder and wisdom. "We have triumphed. Let the Titans be cast into Tartarus, bound for all time, and let Olympus reign in their stead." The earth quaked in assent, the seas bowed, and the sky cleared. A new age had dawned, the age of the Olympians. The shadow of prophecy, yet as the gods rejoiced, Metis stood apart, her gaze distant. She alone heard the whisper of fate, the prophecy yet unfulfilled. The son of Metis shall surpass his father. She smiled faintly, for wisdom knew that victory is but the first stone in the path of destiny. And even in triumph, the shadow of what was to come stretched long across the newborn throne of Zeus. Chapter 8. The Dark Prophecy. The war was ended. Cronus lay bound in Tartarus, his sickle cast aside, his pride broken. The elder Titans groaned in chains, their voices swallowed by the abyss. And upon the bright peaks of Olympus, the new gods raised their thrones, their laughter like dawn breaking after a storm. Zeus sat upon the highest seat, his thunderbolt in hand, his eyes gleaming with the fire of victory. The heavens bent to his will, the seas rolled at his command, and the earth yielded to his voice. All bowed before him, save one. For in the silence of triumph, Metis kept her counsel, and in her heart stirred a truth too perilous to speak aloud. The whisper of Gaia. One night, as the stars shone clear, and the moon bathed Olympus in silver light, Zeus wandered alone. His mind, though drunk with triumph, was restless. Victory is a crown heavy to bear, and his heart longed for certainty. He descended to the foot of Olympus, where the great earth goddess Gaia slumbered beneath roots and stone. Grandmother, Zeus called, you who bore the Titans and the gods, I seek your counsel. Tell me, is my reign secure, or does fate weave still another thread? Gaia stirred, her voice deep as rivers, slow as mountains shifting. Child of Rhea, storm-born king, your throne is won, but your reign is not yet safe. For prophecy does not sleep, even when Titans fall. Zeus's heart tightened. Speak, Gaia. What doom awaits me? And Gaia, her voice heavy with sorrow, spoke the truth. If you take Metis to wife, she shall bear you children. The first, a daughter, wise and strong. The second, a son who shall be greater than his father, who shall seize the throne from your hand and end your reign. The words struck Zeus like a blade of ice. The storm within him faltered. A son who would surpass him as he had surpassed Cronus. The cycle of fathers devoured by sons would rise again. The fear of Zeus returned to Olympus, but the triumph upon his brow was dimmed. He looked upon Metis, who moved with quiet grace, her eyes pools of unfathomable wisdom, and his heart was torn. For he loved her, not only for her beauty, but for her cunning, her counsel that had raised him to victory. She was the mind behind his throne, the conscience behind his power, and yet, in her womb lay prophecy's doom. At his feasts he smiled, but the laughter rang hollow. When he raised his thunderbolt, its fire seemed colder. His siblings saw the shadow upon him, but none dared ask. Only Metis watched with knowing eyes, her silence sharper than words. The choice of the king in secret, Zeus sought the counsel of the fates, those three who spun, measured, and cut the threads of life. Tell me, he begged, can prophecy be undone? Can the child of Metis be unmade? But the fates laughed, their voices like the creak of ancient looms. Foolish king, even you cannot unweave what is woven. To resist prophecy is to hasten its hand. To devour fear is to taste its bitterness. Their riddles tormented him, but he understood one truth. If he took Metis as wife, he risked his throne. If he cast her aside, he risked losing the wisdom that guided his reign. The cunning of Metis, though silent, saw his turmoil. For wisdom peers through silence as easily as through words. One night she came to him, her form radiant in moonlight, her voice soft as the sea. Why do you fear me, Lord of Storm? She asked. Have I not stood at your side when others faltered? Did I not free your siblings, guide your hand, and crown your reign with victory? Why now do you doubt me? Zeus, torn between love and dread, did not answer. His silence was heavier than any thunderbolt. Metis smiled faintly, her eyes both tender and sorrowful. I know the prophecy, I have always known. Do not think wisdom blind to its own doom. Yet I do not regret my counsel, nor the freedom I have given the world. If fate decrees my son shall surpass you, then so it must be." Her words, spoken without fear, struck Zeus to the core. He realized then that her courage was greater than his own, for she embraced destiny while he sought to flee it. The seed of betrayal, but the shadow of fear is not easily cast aside. In the stillness of night, Zeus's thoughts turned dark. He remembered Cronus devouring his children, how fear of prophecy had driven him to madness. Zeus swore he would not become his father, yet each thought of Metis bearing a son gnawed at him, and so a seed of betrayal took root. He said to Metis one day, "Wise one, show me your skill in change. I have heard you can take any form, from bird to beast, from flame to water. Prove it, beloved, so that I may marvel at your power." Metis, unsuspecting, agreed. She became a hawk, swift and fierce. She became a fish, darting through water. She became a flame, dancing in his palm. At last, she shrank to a fly, tiny and delicate, buzzing before his face. In that moment, Zeus acted. He opened his mouth and swallowed her whole. The silence after the deed was done. Metis was gone from the world, her body consumed, her voice silenced. Zeus sat alone, his heart torn between triumph and despair. He had averted prophecy, or so he believed, but within him, Metis did not die. She lived on, her wisdom woven into his thoughts, her counsel echoing in his mind. She became his conscience, his inner voice, guiding his judgments, tempering his wrath. And deep within his being, she began to weave a new destiny-crafting armor, shaping wisdom, preparing for the birth of the daughter Gaia had foretold. Thus the dark prophecy was fulfilled in part, and Zeus, though he believed himself secure, carried within him both his greatest strength and his inevitable fate. For no king, however mighty, may swallow wisdom without consequence. Chapter 9. The betrayal and the devouring. The halls of Olympus gleamed with new splendor. The thrones of the gods stood proud, the sacred fire of Hestia burned eternal, and hymns rose from the lips of mortals who praised their new rulers. Yet behind the marble glory, a silence lingered, a silence born not of peace, but of guilt. For Zeus had swallowed Metis, his wisest counselor, his dearest companion, and the bearer of prophecy. He had done it not out of hatred, but fear. And fear, once tasted, never leaves the tongue of kings. The mourning of the gods, the other Olympians, soon noticed her absence. Hera, sharp-eyed and proud, was the first to ask, "Where is Metis, the silk-tongued? Has she abandoned Olympus?" Zeus forced a smile, though the storm inside him trembled. "She has gone into the depths of the earth to meditate upon prophecy. When she returns, her wisdom will be greater still." Hera narrowed her gaze, for her heart trusted little in the words of her brother and husband to-be. Yet she did not press him, for even she feared the shadow that clung to his voice. Poseidon muttered in private, "Strange it is that wisdom should vanish when most needed." Hades, ever grim, said only, "The silence of wisdom is the loudest omen," and Demeter, who loved Metis as a sister, wept in secret, watering the scorched earth with her tears. The voice within, but though Metis's body was gone, her spirit was not extinguished. Within the storming heart of Zeus, she whispered still. Her voice was no longer heard by others, but only by him, unseen counsel, sharper than a blade, calmer than the sea. "Why do you brood, Lord of Thunder?" she whispered. "Did you think wisdom could be silenced by devouring it? I live within you now, and forever shall I guide your hand." At first, Zeus trembled, fearing madness had seized him, but the voice was too steady, too clear. He realized with dread that Metis had not been destroyed. She had become part of him, her mind entwined with his own. At councils, her voice sharpened his judgments. In war, her counsel steadied his hand. In love, her whispers tempered his pride. The Olympians marveled at his sudden clarity. "Never has Zeus spoken with such wisdom," they said. "Truly, he is king of gods and men." But Zeus alone knew the truth. His crown was forged from betrayal, and his wisdom was not his own. Dreams of the daughter, yet dreams began to plague him, dreams of a maiden clothed in shining armor, springing from his head with a cry of war. She bore a spear of lightning and a shield radiant as the sun. Her eyes blazed with her mother's cunning and his father's storm. Zeus would awaken in a sweat, the image of this daughter burning in his mind. He knew her name, though it had not yet been spoken, Athena, and with each dream his fear grew. Was she the child Gaia foretold? Would she surpass him, seizing the throne as prophecy decreed? Metis's voice answered from within, "Fear not, King of Heaven. The daughter to come will not overthrow you. She will be your ally, your champion, the embodiment of wisdom and war united." But prophecy does not die, Zeus, it waits. The suspicion of Hera, sharp as ever, watched Zeus grow restless. She noticed the flicker in his eyes when counsel was sought, as though he listened to a voice none could hear. She noticed his hand upon his brow, as though something pressed within his skull. One night she confronted him in the shadow of Olympus's great pillars. "Tell me, brother," she demanded, "what secret gnaws at you? You speak with wisdom, yet your eyes are haunted. You dream, yet you will not rest. Where is Metis, and what have you done?" Zeus's stormy gaze turned upon her. For a moment he nearly spoke the truth, that he had swallowed the one he loved, that she whispered still inside him. But pride sealed his lips. "Do not question me, Hera," he thundered. "The throne is mine, and Olympus is secure. That is all you need know." Hera said nothing more, but in her heart she marked the shadow that clung to him, and in time her suspicion would grow into wrath. The burden of kingship ruling Olympus was no simple task. Mortals prayed for harvests, seas demanded calm, mountains roared with fire. Zeus, guided by Metis's unseen counsel, ruled with wisdom unmatched. Yet, with each judgment, he felt her presence more deeply, not only her voice, but her essence, her being. At times he wondered, was he still Zeus, or had he become something greater, a fusion of storm and wisdom, man and woman, king and queen? He feared the answer, for it hinted at the undoing of his self. Still, he could not deny the strength it gave him, for without Metis could he have ruled at all? The growing pain, but then came the pain. It began as a faint pressure behind his brow, a whisper of thunder within his skull. Days passed, and the pain grew, swelling like a storm cloud, until lightning seemed to burn behind his eyes. He would clutch his head in agony, roaring so loudly that mortals trembled and mountains cracked. The Olympians feared for him. "What ails you, brother?" cried Poseidon. "Shall the king of gods be undone by his own crown?" Hades muttered. "Perhaps the throne is cursed, as all thrones are." But Zeus gave no answer, for he alone knew the truth. Within him, Metis was crafting something, a child, a daughter. The prophecy awakens, the day of fulfillment drew near. The pain became unbearable, lightning flashing from his brow, thunder rolling from his chest. His cries shook Olympus, echoing across sea and earth. The gods gathered in terror. "What madness is this?" they cried. And within Zeus Metis' voice whispered one last time, "Do not fear, Lord of Storm. What comes is not your doom, but your legacy. Open yourself, and let wisdom be born." And then her voice faded into silence. Thus the betrayal was complete, the devouring done. But prophecy stirred within Zeus's very skull. Soon the child of Metis would emerge, the daughter destined to shape the fate of Olympus and beyond. The cycle of father and child was not broken, it had only begun anew. Chapter 10. The birth of Athena. The skies above Olympus had never known such turmoil. For days and nights without end, thunder rumbled across the heavens, lightning tore open the dark, and Zeus's cries echoed like the breaking of worlds. Mortals trembled in fear, believing the end of creation had come. Even the gods themselves quailed, for the storm was not upon the earth, or was within the very skull of their king. Zeus, Lord of Storm, ruler of Olympus, writhed in agony upon his throne. His hands clawed at his brow, his eyes burned with lightning, and his voice shook the pillars of heaven. "Strike me down," he roared, his words half mad with pain. "Better death than this torment. My skull is a prison, my mind a battlefield." The Olympians gathered in dread, uncertain and powerless. Hera stood with arms folded, her face pale but unyielding. Poseidon gripped his trident, helpless fury in his eyes. Hades lingered in shadow, muttering of curses and fate. Demeter wept openly, and Hestia prayed silently to the eternal flame. None could ease his pain, for this was no mortal illness, nor any wound of battle. It was prophecy itself, laboring to be born. The summoning of Hephaestus, at last, in desperation. Zeus cried out to the one god not yet honored with a throne, Hephaestus, the master smith, son of Hera, whose skill with forge and hammer was without rival. "Come forth, Hephaestus," Zeus thundered. "Bring your hammer and split open my skull, else I shall be undone." The gods gasped. Hera's eyes widened in shock at the command, for never had a king begged to be struck down. But Hephaestus, loyal and steady, obeyed. He approached with his great hammer, the tool that shaped mountains and tempered flame. He bowed before Zeus, though his hands trembled. "My lord, to strike the head of the king is sacrilege," he whispered. "Do it," Zeus bellowed, lightning crackling from his eyes. "Obey your king, lest all Olympus be consumed by my agony." The hammer blow, so Hephaestus lifted his hammer high, and with a cry that echoed through the heavens, he brought it down upon Zeus's brow. The blow rang out like the shattering of worlds. From the split in his skull burst forth a blinding light, brighter than dawn, fiercer than fire. The gods shielded their eyes, the earth quaked, and the seas roared as though answering some ancient call. And from the wound leaped Athena, fully grown, clad in gleaming armor, her shield radiant as the sun, her spear tipped with lightning. With a cry that shook the cosmos, she sprang forth, a warrior maiden of perfect form, her eyes sharp with wisdom, her voice ringing with the power of destiny. "I am Athena," she proclaimed, "born of wisdom, child of storm, defender of Olympus, guardian of justice." The light of her birth seared the heavens. The mountains bent their peaks, the rivers changed their course, and mortals lifted their heads in awe, for though they could not see her, they felt the presence of a new power one, both fierce in war and wise in counsel. The awe of the gods, the Olympians, fell silent, struck with wonder and fear. Poseidon lowered his trident. "Never have I seen such a birth, not from earth, nor sea, nor womb, but from the head of the king himself. She is like no other, Hades muttered darkly, though even he was moved. So the prophecy begins. Beware, brother, for the child born of wisdom may yet be your undoing. Demeter, her tears now of joy, whispered, she is radiant, like a flame that will never die. Hestia, ever gentle, bowed her head. The fire of Olympus burns brighter with her among us, and Hera, though her heart burned with suspicion, could not deny the majesty of the new goddess. Yet within her eyes lay a storm of another kind jealousy, for she had borne no such child, nor one who sprang forth with such glory. The first words of Athena turned to her father, who still staggered from the pain of her birth. She knelt before him, bowing her head, her armor clattering like thunder. Father, King of heaven, she said, her voice calm yet resolute, I am your child, not born to usurp, but to serve. Wisdom and war are mine, but they are yours also, for I sprang from your mind, shaped by the counsel of Metis. Fear not, for I shall not take your throne. I shall guard it, and all who dwell beneath it. Her words soothed him, as rain calms the burning earth. Zeus, though weak and pale, looked upon her with pride. Daughter, he said, you are both my torment and my triumph. From my pain you have risen, but in you I see the strength of Olympus secured. Let it be known, Athena shall be honored among gods and men, for she is the living union of storm and wisdom, the celebration of Olympus. The gods raised their voices in acclaim. Hymns rang through Olympus, praising Athena's birth. The Cyclopes lit new fires upon their forges. The Hecatonchires cast stones into the sea in her honor, and mortals below offered sacrifices, sensing the arrival of a new protector. Athena took her place among the Olympians, her seat beside her father's throne, her shield and spear resting by her side. She was not a goddess of soft counsel only, nor of ruthless war. Alone she was the balance of both, the living embodiment of wisdom in battle, justice in rule, and strategy in struggle. The shadow remains yet, though joy-filled Olympus, a shadow lingered. The prophecy had been fulfilled in part. A child of Metis had been born, and she was mighty indeed. But what of the second child, Gaia foretold? The son who would surpass his father, the one destined to end Zeus's reign. Zeus pushed the thought from his mind, clinging to Athena's vow of loyalty. But deep within him, where Metis still whispered faintly, the truth remained. The cycle of succession was not ended. Wisdom had been born, radiant and loyal, but prophecy was patient, and fate wove its threads with care. Chapter 11. Athena's Rise and the Legacy of Metis. The birth of Athena was not the end of prophecy, but the dawn of a new chapter in the fate of gods and mortals. From the moment she sprang forth in gleaming armor, the balance of Olympus shifted. A new power had entered the halls of eternity, one that fused wisdom with war, justice with strength, foresight with fire. The gods rejoiced, mortals whispered in awe, and Zeus sat prouder than ever upon his throne. Yet beneath the celebration stirred questions none dared speak aloud. What place would this new goddess claim? What legacy would she carve in heaven and on earth? And in her rise, would the memory of her mother Metis, devoured in silence, be forgotten or reborn? The first trials. Athena did not linger long in Olympus before her strength was tested. From the shadowy chasms of the earth, monsters stirred, awakened by the fall of the Titans. Giants, born of Gaia's wrath, rose against the new order, hurling mountains and flames. Mortals cried out, cities smoldered, and the gods prepared for war anew. Zeus raised his thunderbolt, Poseidon his trident, Ares his sword. But Athena stepped forward, her eyes clear, her voice steady. "Father, brothers, sisters," she said, "let me prove my strength. Not by thunder, nor by storm, but by strategy and wisdom shall these foes be undone." The gods, curious, allowed her command, and Athena, cunning as her mother, arranged her plan. She placed traps in valleys, drew the giants into narrow passes, and used their fury against them. Where Ares would have charged blindly, she turned the battle with precision. At last, clad in her shining aegis, she struck the final blow, driving her spear through the heart of Enceladus, the greatest of the giants. His body crashed upon the earth, and there it lay, forming the island men would one day call Sicily. The gods marveled, and Zeus himself declared, "Truly, Athena is mightiest in wisdom and war alike. Let all honor her as the guardian of Olympus and the protector of mortals, the patron of mortals, unlike many of the gods who ruled with distance or cruelty." Athena turned her gaze upon mortals with keen interest. She walked among them, unseen yet felt, teaching them the crafts of weaving, pottery, and shipbuilding. She whispered strategies to generals in their dreams, guided inventors to forge tools of bronze, and gave kings counsel in ruling with justice. Where Ares delighted in the slaughter of battle, Athena sought victory with the least blood spilled. She valued discipline over rage, courage over cruelty, and justice over conquest. Mortals built temples in her honor, and in time, a city would rise beneath her name, Athens, the jewel of wisdom and the heart of philosophy. Though that day lay far ahead, the seeds were sown in her earliest acts of guidance. The whisper of Metis, yet Athena's greatness was not wholly her own. For within her echoed the faintest trace of Metis's, the wisdom of her mother, carried through her birth from Zeus's skull. At times, when she pondered deeply or crafted new stratagems, she felt a presence within, soft as a breeze, steady as a flame. It was not a voice she could name, but a memory, a legacy that stirred in her blood. She would pause and whisper to herself, "Mother, though I never saw your face, I know you live in me." And in Zeus, to Metis, whispered still, though faintly, though hidden. The king of heaven did not speak of it, but at times he too felt her presence, guiding or warning, a conscience he could not silence. Thus the wisdom of Metis lived on through Zeus, through Athena, and through the fate of all Olympus, Hera's envy. But not all looked kindly on Athena's rise. Hera, queen of heaven, watched with smoldering eyes as the young goddess gained honor, worship, and glory. No child of hers had sprung forth in such splendor. No birth of hers had shaken the cosmos. "Zeus has crowned her above all others," Hera murmured. "But she is not his only daughter, nor shall she be his last. If he exalts her, then what place is left for the rest? What place for me, his wife and queen?" Her envy festered, and though she did not yet act against Athena, the seed of discord had been planted. In time, it would grow into rivalries that shook Olympus anew. The council of Athena in Olympus, Athena quickly became not only a warrior, but a counselor. At assemblies, when gods quarreled, her voice cut through the noise with calm authority. "Let not pride undo us," she would say. "Ares, your fury blinds you. Poseidon, your pride in the sea clouds, your judgment. Apollo, your light burns too fiercely. Justice lies not in excess, but in balance." The gods, though proud, listened, for her words rang not with arrogance, but with truth. Even Zeus relied upon her counsel, more than he admitted aloud. Some whispered that she was not merely his daughter, but the second voice of his mind, the living echo of Metis. And though Zeus would thunder against such talk, in his heart he knew it was not wholly false. The legacy of Metis. One night, as Athena stood upon the heights of Olympus, watching the stars burn eternal, she felt the faintest whisper on the wind. "Daughter." She froze. The voice was not her father's, nor any god's. It was softer, older, yet familiar in a way that stirred her very being. "Daughter, you are my gift to the world. Through you, wisdom lives. Through you, justice breathes. Never forget, though gods hunger for power, wisdom must guide it, else all shall fall." Tears filled Athena's eyes, tears the warrior maiden rarely shed. She bowed her head to the wind and whispered, "Mother, I carry you within me. I will not fail." And though the wind grew silent, she felt Metis near, a presence eternal watching through her. The shadow of prophecy. Yet, even in her triumphs, the shadow of Gaia's prophecy lingered. The son of Metis had he been averted, or only delayed? Athena was loyal, but fate had not spoken its last word. Zeus, though he smiled at his daughter's glory, kept one eye ever fixed on the horizon, dreading the day another child might rise to challenge him. Thus, even as wisdom flourished and Athena shone, the cycle of fear, prophecy, and power wound tighter, like a bowstring drawn but not yet loosed. Chapter 12. The eternal legacy of Metis. The halls of Olympus gleamed with everlasting fire. The war with the Titans was long ended, the giants cast down, and Athena had taken her seat among the immortals. Order reigned in the cosmos, or so it seemed. Yet, in the stillness of eternity, the shadow of prophecy lingered, woven into the very fabric of fate. For though Zeus sat enthroned as king of gods and men, the words of Gaia had never been unspoken. The son of Metis shall surpass his father, and wisdom, though swallowed, could not be silenced. Zeus the uneasy upon his throne of storm, Zeus looked across the world with pride, yet within him stirred unease. He ruled the skies, commanded the seas, and bent the earth to his will. Mortals prayed to him, gods obeyed him, and his thunderbolts struck fear into every heart. Yet in the quiet moments, when storms faded and the stars alone bore witness, he felt Metis whisper, still gentle, steady, unyielding, "Power without wisdom is ruin. Kingship without justice is tyranny. Remember, Zeus, that the crown you wear was forged by fear as much as by victory." And though he thundered to drown her out, he could not deny the truth of her words. Athena's glory, Athena, radiant and steadfast, grew in renown. Among gods she was honored, among mortals adored. Kings sought her counsel, warriors prayed for her guidance. Artisans thanked her for craft and skill. She became not only goddess of war and wisdom, but the very spirit of civilization. The city that would bear her name, Athens, was yet unborn, but already she sowed the seeds of its greatness. Wherever mortals built temples or gathered in council, her presence was felt. She taught them that strength without mind is folly, and that justice is the highest form of power. Zeus watched her rise with pride, yet also with unease. For though she vowed loyalty, her brilliance cast a long shadow, one that even the king of heaven could not ignore. Hera's wrath. Not all rejoiced in Athena's ascendancy. Hera, queen of heaven, bore jealousy like fire in her heart. She had given Zeus many children, yet none had shaken the world as Athena had. "She is not mine," Hera whispered in bitterness. she sprang from his head, a child without mother, a rival to my throne. She is praised as the highest of goddesses, while I, who endured his storms and betrayals, am scorned. Thus envy smoldered, and though Hera masked it with dignity, it would one day fuel rivalries fierce as fire. For Olympus, though crowned in victory, was not free from strife. The eternal prophecy, meanwhile, the question of prophecy, hung heavy in every heart. Was Athena the fulfillment of Gaia's words? Or was she but the first part, the daughter foretold, with the son yet to come? Some said the prophecy had been broken, that by swallowing Metis, Zeus had bound fate itself. Others whispered that fate cannot be bound, only delayed. Even Athena, wise though she was, pondered the shadow of her unborn brother. She would gaze at the stars and wonder, will another rise from the depths of prophecy? And if he comes, will he be enemy or ally? But no answer came, for prophecy speaks in riddles, and time alone unveils their truth. The voice of Metis. Yet, through all, Metis endured not in body, but in spirit, woven into the minds of Zeus and Athena alike. She was the whisper in the storm, the spark in the forge, the clarity in counsel, the justice in judgment. Her legacy was not merely her daughter, nor the wisdom she gave Zeus, but the eternal truth she embodied, that cunning and foresight are greater than brute force, and that wisdom outlasts even the mightiest throne. In moments of doubt, Athena would close her eyes and feel her mother's presence. In moments of rage, Zeus would hear her counsel and restrain his hand. Though swallowed, she was not silenced. Though unseen, she was not forgotten. Metis had become eternal not as a figure of flesh, but as the very essence of wisdom itself. The eternal balance, thus the order of the cosmos, was set. Zeus ruled with storm and thunder, Athena with wisdom and war, and Metis with the unseen hand of conscience. Together, though unequal in throne, they formed a balance, power, strategy, and justice bound in fragile harmony. But balance is never permanent. Strife would return among gods, among mortals, even within Zeus himself. Yet, as long as wisdom endured, there was hope that order would prevail over chaos, justice over tyranny, foresight over fear. The legacy from mortals among mortals, the story of Metis, was told and retold, though each generation remembered it differently. Some said she had been devoured and lost forever. Others that she lived on in Athena, still guiding the world. Some cursed Zeus for his betrayal. Others praised his cunning for averting doom. But always, Metis was remembered as the goddess of wisdom, the one who outwitted Cronus, who freed the Olympians, who shaped the fate of gods. And mortals, in their cities and councils, invoked her name when they sought foresight in times of peril. For though temples were built to Zeus and altars raised to Athena, the whisper of Metis lived on in the hearts of all who sought wisdom over violence, cunning over pride, truth over fear. The closing of the cycle thus ends the tale of Metis, not in triumph, not in defeat, but in transformation. She was devoured, yet she lived. She bore no son, yet she bore a daughter who shook the cosmos. She was silenced, yet her voice became eternal. The Titans had fallen, the Olympians reigned, and wisdom had found its place in the fabric of creation. And so, in the halls of Olympus, when Zeus sat in judgment, when Athena marched to war, when mortals whispered prayers for guidance, the spirit of Metis was present, still in eternal legacy, unseen yet unbroken forever, guiding the course of fate.